You suggest in the book that the monopoly problem is most serious probably in healthcare. What is worrying you there?
High prices, hospital consolidation, patients are not well informed, prices are not transparent. There's massive third-party payment, which, by the way, doesn't have to be bad, but when combined with these other features, it's very harmful. And the system's a mess. And we pay huge amounts, like 18% of GDP, and so often we're treated poorly, and we're hurt or crushed or broken and frustrated, and something is badly wrong with American healthcare.
I totally agree, and recently had a horrific experience with healthcare approval for a procedure. Not so much that they rejected it, but that they the ability to deal with what came next, the lack of transparency, the ability to talk to a human being, talking about bureaucracy, we were talking about it earlier, was just, it's something you never experience anywhere else in your interactions with providers. And I think a lot about the lack of skin in the game, feedback loops, the things that make the rest of our economy, I think, work pretty well. So on one foot, what would you do if you could to make that either better or fixed? And fixed is the wrong way to think about it, of course, but just the challenge here is that fixing one thing doesn't always make things better. It can make them worse because of the perverse incentives that are operating in the rest of the system. Do you have a vision of what healthcare could be in a different world?
It depends how many things I'm allowed to change. I am a fan
you can't change human nature. I'm going to leave that out. But other than that, I'll let you be pretty free.
But the Singapore system, where you have forced savings, a lot of out-of-pocket expenditure, single payer for catastrophic expenditures, and full price transparency, I'm all for that. I can't imagine how we would get to that from where the United States is now. So we have to do things incrementally. There are some movements going on right now for greater price transparency. Most of what we've got, we're not going to give up. We're going to make it worse. We're going to dig in on it. And we just have to hope technology brings us enough good things, like a cure for cancer, that we'll be happy enough with our healthcare system. But American big business, as manifested through our healthcare system, it does not deserve the defense of other parts of big business I give in my book. And I say as much in the book. The book is not pro-business per se. The book is pro-evidence. And I think in many, but not all cases, the evidence suggests business is doing pretty well by us.
One of the issues that comes up is the political influence of business. And recently had Mike Munger on EconTalk, who worried, as I do, that I like to say that I'm in favor of capitalism, not crony capitalism. The left's response to that is, well, there's no such thing as capitalism. It leads to crony capitalism. And you write, the basic view that big business is pulling the strings in Washington is one of the big myths of our time. Why do you say that? And are you not worried about the political influence of business, especially big business?
I'm worried about it, but I think in large part the left is correct that if you have capitalism, you will get a fair amount of crony capitalism. There's no way you can write it into the Constitution that you won't get it. Most or all of that crony capitalism is bad, but I think it's much overrated as a source of our problems. I think by far the worst examples of it come in the healthcare sector, where I would agree with the critiques of the left and also the right to a large extent. But a lot of the other examples, I think they're a little blown out of proportion. You have a lot of libertarians who want to posture as being like very egalitarian or in favor of the little guy, so they thunder against business. But all these bad policies, like the farm subsidies, which I'm against, Export-Import Bank, yes, I'm against it, add them all up, again, healthcare aside, and ask what's their dead weight loss. It's just not that large. So I think that's an exaggerated issue, which now is being used as a weapon against business, not a weapon against government subsidy.
So I sometimes like to argue when I'm in a argumentative mood or a provocative mood, that the parts of our economy that work the worst would be the housing market, the healthcare market, and the education market, college. And that those are the places where government is most involved. A fair response to that would be, well, they have to be involved because otherwise it would be even worse. But I certainly am horrified when people will say that the healthcare market shows that capitalism can't run healthcare because look how horrible it is. And my answer, of course, is that there's not much capitalism. There's not much free market. And that would be true of housing as well. People have actually blamed capitalism recently for the high prices of, say, housing in San Francisco or New York. And because obviously that shows that greedy landlords are exploiting people as opposed to the fact that the regulations are making it hard for other greedy landlords to bring the price down. So I react to that argument, and in particular, you're singling out healthcare as the place where things don't work well in the large in big business. Would you use the argument that I make somewhat tongue-in-cheek, but somewhat seriously, that it's one of the most corrupted parts of American industry through a government's relentless hand in pricing and in subsidizing through Medicare, Medicaid, and then the subsidy to employer-provided insurance?
It's somehow how that interacts with human irrationality in healthcare purchases, not wanting to see the truth, not wanting to face up to mortality, and how it interacts with the incentives of private businesses. So there are government-run systems which, at least in some ways work better than ours. We have this weird mix where you get a lot of the worst of human irrationality, private sector incentives, government incentives, and we blend them all together. But that said, I think for, half this country or so, we might have the best healthcare system in the world. Now, half isn't enough.
Yeah.
But, one also has to be balanced. It's not a complete failure. We're by far the world's leading center of medical innovation. The pharmaceutical sector has done phenomenal things at relatively low expense. Frank Lichtenberg estimates that to save, another year of life through pharmaceutical drugs, it costs $12,000 a year. And maybe that number is off. But if you think that, say, someone who's HIV positive today has a completely normal life expectancy, that's phenomenal. So American system is very mixed. On crony capitalism, I would say this: wouldn't you be delighted if we had more crony capitalism in real estate markets? The big developers would get together with the San Francisco board supervisors and mayors and could have paid them off to allow more building, and it would be unfairly allocated and corrupt, but a lot would get built. I mean, that would be wonderful. That'd be such a big advance.